Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Luke, I am your father.
This is what we tried inside. So my name is Cise. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the Similar Research Laboratory in Oslo, Norway. And I want to talk to you about over-the-top streaming analytics, more specifically 7 things about OTT streaming analytics. Why? Because as you might have also seen from the program of this conference, we don't necessarily talk so much about analytics, right? We talk a lot about player, playback stuff, encoding, delivery pipelines, CDNs, all sorts of things around those, but not so much about analytics, except for Needy, maybe. So I want to do that. A short shout out or a confession that I have to make. I stole shamelessly the title of my talk from this lovely gentleman, Ha-Joon Chang. He's an author of the book called 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism, where he's trying to debunk myths about capitalism, which is what I will try to do in this talk about streaming analytics. And we will go through what they don't tell you. And we have 7 things to go through, so let's just start. The first thing is, streaming analytics is not only for debugging errors. Yeah, these are not just monitoring platforms where you can set alerts and then you're notified when there's something wrong. There are lots of cool products out there, Mux data being one of them, and we have seen a couple of uses of it during this conference as well, which you can connect to your web player or native players, and then they collect a ton of metadata and metrics, QoE metrics or any other types of metrics, and then they can display it in these nice formats with these dashboards, and you can really do a lot with this data, and this is what I want to talk to you about now. So I don't know if you can read it, but these lovely products that I have listed here were also listed as some in the top 10, but the very first row goes to in-house analytics, which actually means that there's not that much convergence right now in the industry with respect to analytics products, so people are still doing their own in-house solutions, but that's okay. One problem, though, is that Google Analytics is listed in the second with 37%, which is not even a streaming analytics solution. It's like web analytics people, so shame. But okay. So I want to share some experiences with a hardware testbed that I had the privilege of using until a couple of years ago, which I think is similar things that can be used with analytics products and these big data sets that they're privy to having. So we had this hardware testbed composed of these measurement nodes. These were basically 2 APU boards with 3 cellular modems, the red ones. Unfortunately, no 5G, but we had 4G. And 1 Wi-Fi modem, the green one you see there. They had a Debian Stretch, a lightweight Linux that could run Docker containers, so virtualized experiments. And experimenters were able to schedule on this platform, by which I mean 100+ nodes spread around 6 countries in Europe. Experiments that they thought were worthy of doing on multi-homed clients, meaning some hardware client which has multiple network connections, right? So this is what we did for our streaming research. We did the kind of things like, okay, let's have a YouTube client, Dockerized, headless, YouTube client, which connects to YouTube to stream some stuff, but let's configure it in a cool way. Yeah, so let's do it with Firefox, let's do it with Chrome. This is also Selenium instrumentation. Let's do it with TCP, let's do it with Quick, and let's do it over multiple different networks, different operators, and maybe even mobile broadband and fixed at the same time. Another thing we did, okay, let's not just do the YouTube player, right? Let's just do our own players. Let's put Bitmove in, Dash.js, Shaka, other players. And then this also allows us to configure, customize the server side and add an analytics product. And then we do the same thing. Yeah, we stream over multiple different networks and configuration stuff. Then we said, okay, how about different ABR algorithms? Not just the players themselves, but different ABR algorithms. So we do the same thing, where we have the client on the measurement node, and then we have our own control server, and we just run maybe one reference player. Here it was AStream, but it could have been Dash.js. And we run it with different ABR algorithms over different networks and look at, what's going on. So the kind of things you can do, for instance, is look at metrics of interest to you, QoE metrics of interest, like initial delay, good put quality, buffer, stalling, anything that you're interested in. And you could look at what kind of influence factors from different layers of the protocol stack are having influence on these metrics, like from the application layer, browser benchmarking, Firefox, Chrome, transport layer, TCP versus Quick, network, how is the network bandwidth category influencing QoE, physical, signal coverage, stuff like this, right? And I'm going to show you some slides, but we really don't need to go into the detail with respect to these. They're just there so that I can get my reimbursement for traveling to San Francisco because I'm a researcher. Yeah, so if anyone asks, I put them there. These are our research results from some publications. So what could these results be used for? These are very similar results that these analytics platforms are collecting. For instance, you could do browser and transport protocol benchmarking, right? Here I have Firefox versus Chrome, for instance, and I'm looking at it with respect to certain metrics that are of interest to me. We could do TCP versus QUIC, like I mentioned, transport stuff. We could do fancier visualizations of the transport stuff. We could do network bandwidth category. We could do signal coverage, how that affects QoE. And then you can get like an overview of what layers affect what kind of QoE metrics, right? Or you could do stuff like player and operator benchmarking. Say I am interested in one specific metric, which is startup time. Can I look at, for instance, 3 different players and then say that, how they work with respect, how they perform with respect to this metric in different networks, for instance. Or you could do stuff like this, where you do ABR and operator together. Here we were looking, this is super old. Netflix still had BBA by then. So we had like 3 ABR algorithms in 3 mobile broadband networks in Europe, and then we were just comparing picture quality metrics like OPV, QPS, and RSSIM. Super old, but this is the kind of analysis you can do. And I know that Will was not naming names, but I am willing to name names. Operators in Norway are worse than operators in Sweden, because, you see it in all ABR algorithms with respect to segment bitrate. And you can also do things with respect to up switches, down switches, whatever. So you can do like really, really cool stuff, because this data is being collected similar to my data. This data is being collected somehow in a crowdsourced fashion, not so repeatable maybe, or controlled as I had to do with my hardware testbed, but they are being collected in Mux data or Bitmovie Analytics or Conviva. And it's helpful for all of us, yeah, all through this pipeline. Network operators, CDNs, content providers, device vendors, application developers like player developers, researchers like me, end users, everyone can benefit from the results of this, right? So let's use this data. Okay, the second thing is that we're not actually using AI. I know that's like a super nice marketing ploy when analytics products say, we have AI in our pipeline. Do you though? Okay, this is from the Bitmovie developer report, where people were asked what they expect to use AI and machine learning for. And I looked at them, and they're either about things that are related to encoding or player. There's literally nothing about analytics. I can assure you. There's stuff about content preparation and presentation, more about encoding. Like if you can do scene boundary detection, which is cool. Not to say that these things are not super cool. Scene boundary detection, object detection. You can do more efficient encoding stuff, right? You can do customization, personalization. These are all stuff that the player can use, like recommendation systems and things like this. Glorified bandwidth estimation. This is just bandwidth estimation, I think, for ABR development. This is also for players. So there is nothing at the moment that we are really doing for analytics with respect to AI, I believe. And one example could be, for instance, the anomaly detection and root cause analysis, which is the real meaning of debugging from the first thing, if you remember. So we can find out not only if errors occur and just get alerts, but I'll have a bigger understanding or deeper understanding of them and model them and get insights. Yeah, where do they occur in the delivery pipeline? Are they transient or are they permanent? What kind of configurations, like all those things that I mentioned, what kind of browser, player, ABR, location, time of day of week combinations do cause these errors. So we can do this kind of stuff. And the cool way to do it, or let's say the easy way to do it today, feed it to some AI, right? This is a very simplified representation of anomaly detection in just 2D. Of course, we should do it in like, 10,000D. But the idea is that you can teach an algorithm, the AI model, to find out these outliers in larger dimensions. Yeah, so it can be all of those dimensions that I've mentioned, and you can train it, and then we'll just do it for you. And apparently the deep ones are better, deeper the better. So you can drop the traditional machine learning stuff and go for the deep neural network stuff, and also drop all the advanced statistics, because apparently in every aspect of anomaly detection, they beat it. Proven by literature, it's not me. Okay, thing 3. What we talk about when we talk about QoE, I'm claiming is wildly different. Here I'm showing 4 different QoE models. QoE models are these things that use all these raw metrics and metadata to give you, for instance, one aggregate score, right? For a playback session. So like one composite score of how well the session was, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 100. And you see, even from just these 4 examples, by the way, there are like tons of them in literature, everybody's doing it in a different way. Everybody's using different raw metrics and metadata to calculate the so-called QoE, which is kind of understandable. And not only happens in standards like the ITUP 1203, 1204, or academic models, but also in industry. I think we also discussed this yesterday at some Slack thread, where even the analytics products themselves have their own custom way of giving you a QoE score, right? So for instance, okay, Bitmovin doesn't do it. Conviva has something called Streaming Performance Index. MediaMelon has a Q metric. Mux has the viewer experience score, which Will was also using yesterday, if you remember. NPO has a happiness score, which I think is like thumbs up and down. So everybody's doing it their own way. Not to say that this is super wrong, but they are not compatible at the moment, yeah? So that's the status quo that we should understand. It's not transferable. And there are no existing industry standards that are telling these analytics products to do it in a certain way, you know, to calculate the composite score in a certain way. And the naive way would be, which is what I did like until a couple of months ago, is let's just tell them to do it the same way. You know, let's find like the silver bullet and then, you know, like define a metric and then ask them to calculate it. How hard can it be? I wanted the one ring to rule them all, but there is no such thing. There is no one ring to rule them all. I wish there was, because there is no one type of QoE, or let's say there is no one meaning of QoE. Yeah, QoE might mean different things depending on, or it might be calculated in different ways depending on whether the reference information is available, yeah? It determines whether you can use VMAF or not, for instance. Whether you need a correlation with subjective studies. If you want some validation of the model that was done with actual people, like subjective studies, maybe you go for the ITU models. If you have real-time computation demands, then you don't go for something super complex, you do something lightweight. If it depends on the codec, so if you want a model which is specific to your codec, which is validated on that, then you use a specific model, or if you want something that is more broadly applicable to all codecs, then you use a different model. And then which metrics you choose might really depend on the kind of streaming service you're evaluating, the kind of use case, whether it's VOD or live. Imagine, for instance, a TikTok video and the YouTube, or maybe even a Netflix long film being evaluated the same way. That is a little bit not so cool, right? So maybe you want to evaluate them in different ways because their use cases are different, yeah? So the QoE model for each of these use cases could actually be different. That's why I have no answer for that, but let's just document things well and, you know, inform each other and then all be friends about QoE. I don't know, this is like TBC, the QoE stuff. Okay, thing 4, I had to swap because green goes better with this, is that energy consumption should be a bigger concern for analytics. Not because analytics itself has a large footprint, but because we can do something about it. And I will show you how by shamelessly cheating off of Will's slides from an old keynote from some months ago. I don't know where Will is in the room, but sorry, don't blacklist me. This was a really cool slide. I actually am stealing couple, where he's showing where the energy consumption is in the delivery pipeline, right? It's not in the encode because we do it like once, right? It's not in the compression. I mean, maybe it's a little bit in the compression in the CDN, but we also don't do it so many times. Where we do it most is, where's Christian? When he does the art and when he tells you to do the art with the decoder on your phone, that's where the energy consumption is. Where at the end, at the playback side, everybody's decoding the same popular content again and again and again. And then we are using these super energy-consuming type of decoders, like the software ones, or AV1, or stuff like this, you know? So we are literally spending most of it at the edge where we are to blame, like the consumers, right? Here, he also had an example from a publication, and there are more publications like this. We can today actually quantify this energy consumption per device and per codec. Yeah, so you can see from like top to bottom how it increases for different codecs and hardware to software decoding, right? So we actually can quantify it at the moment. By the way, note that screen, like the screen brightness stuff takes out 50%. So this is also a bit on us, always, you know, going with the high screen brightness. So what I would propose is to have something like a carbon footprint estimate. Analytics products could easily integrate this. You know, they could calculate it per streaming session, and they could base it on things like the device, display resolution, screen brightness, if they can read it. I'm not really sure about this. Codec, and maybe some info from the CDNs themselves, which they could give us like maybe yearly estimates of their, I don't know, energy consumption. I don't know how honest they would be, but we could have some field like this in analytics products where it's also like a warning to all of us, you know? For every streaming session, there could be an indicator, and maybe it could even be integrated into the screening of streaming, the group, or, you know, this initiative. Okay, 5, we do not have enough standards for streaming analytics. I know again that Will kill me for saying this, but I don't really mean it. What I mean is that we do have standards, but we don't really use them well. Okay, we have really, really cool standards. So there's the SAND, there's the CMCD, there's the CTA 2066, and they're really nice, but they're not there yet, you know, for analytics. SAND is more focused on network components, and the goal is more like to increase network utilization. CMCD is a little bit more towards CDN optimization. CTA is a little bit, it gives a really nice terminology, common terminology, but it's more about aggregate metrics, not just the raw ones, and it's more analytics from the service provider perspective. Yeah, so not all of the, I mean, neither is exactly there yet for defining to us what an analytics, OTT analytics product should collect, for instance, and how it should collect it, how it should name it, and how this information should be like transferable between different products. And we looked at a lot of products. We made a survey, actually. I hope these references are readable, but the slides will be available later on. We presented this at Mile High Video this year, some months ago, where we were looking at everything that was collected by every product, or there'll be 5 of these products, and they are really collecting a lot. But none of them are compliant with any of the standards, and reversely, the standards are also not including no more than 10% of what these guys collect. So there's a lot of information that these analytics solutions collect, and they have it, for instance, in their dashboards, in their metadata, but the standards don't even include it. So what we need is maybe augmenting the existing standards, because everybody knows we don't want to come up with yet another standard that some people will reject. We maybe want to extend these standards so that there's a bit of a more interplay between the analytics solutions, yeah? And the next thing is about open software. I know that we all like to talk about this a lot, but I don't know how honest we are sometimes when it comes to, really doing something about it. I don't know if you see what's wrong with this picture. This is like a generic survey where they're asking you like where you're from. What I mean is like which line of work. You see what's missing? There's never any researcher, because the industry and research is always so distinct, and we are so used to it, and we take it like granted so much that it really creates this divide, yeah? And I think this is something we have to overcome. And this is where also the open software, open datasets can help a lot, yeah? One thing we can do is research collaborations, or especially topics like these high impact topics and fancy jargon like AI and machine learning, for instance, because there's stuff that researchers also can help industry with, like root cause analysis, anomaly detection, churn prediction, QE investigation. Okay, that's for both, but it's not just for researchers that the open data sets and open source software help. It's also for the industry. So there's like a mutual relationship that I think we could find there, like a sweet spot. And another is, of course, that we have to have more community resources. We need to have reference implementations, tool sets, data sets. Ali was also mentioning yesterday how much they would benefit from data sets, and in turn, they would help industry with their ABR algorithms that are trained on these data sets. So these are very, very, very crucial. And I think we can follow the practice of the -IF in terms of, coming up with the -JS reference player, like building this open source community around the whole product. So that's like a very nice thing we can follow. I don't want to go through this like in too much detail, but I also have a proposal about a community analytics product. I mean, not product, but it's like a tool where we could actually come up with an open source, very lightweight implementation of, let's say, an analytics product, a reference analytics product, which has a collector core, and all the adapters that are used to connect to different players are contributed by volunteers from the community. Yeah, if you have your own player, maybe you also want to write the adapter for this community analytics so that, it can be used with the analytics product. Or maybe a company does that, maybe a researcher does that. I'm pretty sure the researchers would actually do it for the QoE models. Yeah, if they're coming up with their own QoE models and are proposing stuff, I'm pretty sure you can make them, or make their students, contribute some code to actually build these modules so that it's going into this community analytics where we can either have it online, like bitstream models, or offline, which work on summaries or aggregates. But in any case, there could be visualization modules, this and that, so we could do in a modular fashion a very nice community project, which does not necessarily require that much like programming skills. Of course, there will be some, but we could outsource a lot of it to students. I really try not to say slaves there because Ali does this all the time. And we could, have this as a reference implementation. We could have it standards compliant. We could maintain it as a consortium of researchers and academia. I know I seem like this wide-eyed, naive person, but we really could do this, and it would benefit like everyone. Okay, so the last thing, and this is supposed to be actually thing 7, but this was just a clickbait for my abstract to get accepted, so I actually don't have much to say about the metaverse, but let's just Let's do it. The biggest problem, yes, I watched it. So the biggest problem is not legs, as what's his name would like you to believe. What's his name? Zuckerberg would like you to believe. The biggest problem is that we are not there yet in terms of what we want to achieve. You know, we don't know where we're going, and this is why we have all these, for instance, work around standardization or discussions, or, you know, we are not there technically either. We had lovely talks also during this conference showing we are not even there with VR, AR, or XR separately, let alone doing this conceptualized metaverse of, you know, network of VR networks. So we're really not there yet. So analytics, it's okay if it's not there yet. Yeah, so there's a long ways to go before analytics can get there, because we can't even currently agree on QoE for XR, AR, and VR. Yeah, so also in literature, like in academia, we are not really sure about how we want to define it and what the right metrics are. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to go. That was like the whole point. That's all I can say about Metaverse. But anyway, thanks for listening to me. I know I have to cut here. So these are the 7 things that maybe you can bear in mind next time you think about analytics. And thank you for listening to me.